My name is Philippo, and I'm the director of the Tropical Research and Conservation Center, aka TRACC, in Malaysian Borneo.
Awesome. Thank you very much for giving us some of
Yes,
your time,
of
Robin.
course.
And, like yesterday when I walked past your little booth there,
Yeah.
I couldn't help but be impressed with the difference between what you're doing with TRACC compared to what is the norm that we see underwater. So I'd love for you to just share the knowledge and the work that you're doing with our listeners.
Yeah, so TRACC is really an organization that is really working on trying to recover a problem. So in Malaysia and in many parts in Southeast Asia, there's a lot of historic blast fishing that has been happening. Blast fishing is basically a glass bottle that has been filled with fertilizer and with a detonator and with like fuel or something. And they detonate that, throw it in the water, and it creates a massive explosion. And that's what they use to fish, unfortunately. And I understand why they do it, because there's a socioeconomic problem there, because they're stateless people that are not being recognized by any of the governments, because we are on the border of Malaysia, Indonesia, and the Philippines. And because we as Western society decided this is a border, but if you have the Bajau Laut, people that are like going on fishing boats from place to place, they don't really recognize that, of course. So they're not being acknowledged as citizens of any of the countries. So their only resolution is fishing. And then if you see that one blast fish can get up to 45 kilos of fish, in compared to hook and line of 1.88 per hour, it's a big difference.
45 kilos?
Yeah, up to 45 kilos with one single blast. So if you think about it, if you have a family of 7 to feed, it's destitution. So you're forced into a situation that you would do it anyway.
Yeah.
I would do it probably.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the unfortunate side effect of it is that in our region is that we have just so much destruction that's been happening for over all these years that all of the reefs have been destroyed. Not all of the reefs, but particularly on Pom Pom Island, where it's about 35 kilometers off coast of Semporna, about 40 kilometers from the world famous Sipadan.
Yeah.
So you have on one side, you have Sipadan, one of the most well-known places worldwide. I mean, you've got Pom. In the same radius, completely decimated.
Yeah.
And we are working on the fact of trying to restore the sloping reefs of Pom Pom Island to try and bring it back to like what a Sipadan hopefully was back in the days. And that's really our mission that we are working on together with our volunteers.
Okay. And just to explain to the people that are listening, when we're talking about the decimation of the reefs, we're not talking about little bits of broken coral here, there and everywhere. We're talking about mass distances of literally dead coral.
Yeah, okay. So when TRACC first arrived in 2011, there is a survey that they've done, so TRACC, and they found that there was a 0% coral cover. Zero. So if you have a square meter and you make a quadrant out of that, there would be on average no coral, basically. Wow. And I remember the very first time when I went diving into Pom Pom, you must have heard it as well. If you dive, let's say in Bali instead of Komodo, they say, we don't have coral, we don't have fish, because they compare it to Komodo.
Yes.
Then if you go to Thailand, for example, they say, we don't have coral, we don't have fish, because they compare it to Bali. So I've heard this all my time. Before I started, they said to me, there's no coral and there's no fish. But anticipating like, I've heard this all my life.
Yeah.
And then when I went actually diving, and it's decimation. Nothing. There is no coral and no fish. And it was like a realization, just like, wow, this is actually no coral, no fish.
Yeah.
And particularly when you think about it, rubble, like the small broken off piece of coral that are dead. It all used to be alive. Yes. It all used to be a piece of live coral. And if you now see that, that's just gone. So all of that, it's basically like an underwater graveyard.
Yeah. And as you say, it's an ecosystem, isn't it? If there's no coral and there's no structure, there's no feeding for the little stuff. There's no bigger stuff to feed on the little stuff, and the whole population
the whole
disappears.
Ecosystem is just completely out of whack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I noticed on the images that you've got on the booth there that we've got the common structures that are regularly seen wherever you go in the world that are made and based out of concrete and some wire, et cetera, et cetera. And you briefly touched on yesterday, and I stopped because I wanted to find out today the differences in design that you're using to reconstruct on Pom Pom.
Yeah. So before that, the big issue that we have is that we're working on slopes. So almost all of the reefs worldwide, particularly in Southeast Asia, are sloping reefs. And the issue that we really face is that because there's so much decimation going on, all of the new coral recruits that grow, they tumble down. So what we are missing is not an availability of coral, we're missing the availability of substrate. So we have to come up with artificial reefs, because the same reefs that I've been diving for the last 10 years, still today are looking exactly the same.
Yeah.
So human interference is necessary, just to clarify that, because else you have artificial reefs that are being introduced rather than, restored. So when you have the cement blocks, the normal ones, it's a great way and it's very cost efficient to make artificial reefs and to create a substrate. But the issue is it would never go up to a next level that you can build up in high three-dimensional space. And if you look at a traditional coral reef, you've got bommies that are maybe like 1.5 meters high, 2 meters. Some are smaller, some are bigger, some are massive. And that's what a normal reef looks like. And no matter what you put down, it will never reflect on a normal type of reef.
Yeah.
It will always look like an artificial reef. And the new design that has been done is by Reef Design Lab, is an engineering design, industrial engineering design company in Melbourne.
Okay.
And these guys have been working, first was the Mars modular artificial reef structure that they've deployed in places like the Maldives and such, which was that you can create a bigger three-dimensional structure by using a modular system. And they've been developing that into Mars 2, as they call it. And the Mars 2, when I first met Alex, the founder of Reef Design Lab, we met and we were going to have a short coffee, and we ended up having like conversations for a couple of hours, just talking about artificial reefs. And he showed me the new design of the Mars 2 structures, which looked absolutely fantastic. But then from a practical implementation of looking like, okay, me as a practitioner versus like what has been done in the design lab, so to speak, what could be happening to make it more efficient, for example, for sloping reefs. And basically all the things that we spoke about, he came back a bit later and he was just like, well, this is what it is now. And it just like, it looks awesome.
Yeah.
It looks absolutely beautiful. And it implemented everything that we spoke about as well, that from a practitioner side of view, I was like, this might actually work. Like this might actually work on sloping reefs because it's got a low height, low weight distribution, like very spread out, but still the ability to build up as well.
Uh-huh.
So basically the structures that are being made are it's reverse engineering 3D printed reefs.
Okay.
Is a concept. So think about it. Normally you make a 3D printed reef, you print it with a 3D printer.
Yeah.
And Alex said, look, I would really love to help you, but how are we going to do that? So we've got logistics that are involved. How are you going to get it from Melbourne to this tiny island 35 kilometers offshore of Semporna? That's a nightmare.
Yeah.
So then we spoke about it, like, well, what if we turn it around and if you would provide us with molds? So we 3D print the molds and then we bring back basically the high-end technology of 3D printing to the simplicity of, can you mix cement?
Okay.
So if you can mix cement, you can pour it inside of a mold.
Yeah.
And then each mold is like a Lego block. So there's a male and a female version basically, but they're identical. So they interlock to each other and then they can be built into any form of shape and dimension as you want.
Yeah.
And I think that's like what really makes it special because everything is diver deployable. So you don't need any of the logistics. It doesn't have to be printed anywhere. We just make it on the island.
And obviously it's a reusable mold.
It's a reusable mold. We can do up to 1,000 casts
Yeah.
with one mold.
And does the mold itself have the coarse interior on it to give you the rough texture that you need?
Yeah, so we don't necessarily have the most rough texture of bits, but we've got like all of these grooves in between that theoretically speaking, it would have any kind of sediment that would come under. By the flow, it would go off, but also hypothetically speaking, it would create micro eddies so that like the ridge and then there's the flow that goes over that maybe the nutrients would actually be caught or coral recruits would be getting stuck on there, which then creates life and growth.
Yeah.
But we're very in infant stages. So Alex and Reef Design Lab created this fantastic product and we are now doing a lot of the testing with it to see what can we do.
And well, I mean, those photos that you've got at booth there, I mean, when you look at what it is when it comes out the mold.
Yeah.
So was it 6 months, 8 months? You said the photo was
7 months. Yeah.
7 months.
7 months.
That looks like it's been in place for like 3 years.
Yes. Yeah. The growth on there is very rapid.
Yeah.
And particularly last week, we actually did a survey on it where we found 396 coral recruits in 7 months.
Wow.
And that's without any planting.
Yeah.
And then now we're actually at the stage that we're going to do planting. So this is just the natural flow of things. And now we're going to see how we can escalate this up into doing planting methods on.
That's fabulous. Oh, good on you, mate.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'd love you to come on the podcast and we'd talk about it at length. because
Yes.
I think we could go
Very
on for a
short.
few
Yeah,
hours.
yeah, I know. So much to talk about in that. It's
Yeah.
hard to summarize it as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for stopping by. And before you go,
Yeah.
could you describe what it's like to go on a dive to someone who's never dived before?
Okay. Yes. So for me, diving has really been from nature. I was always a very hyperactive person, lots of energy. And then when I started diving, that felt for me all of a sudden, it's like, oh, wow. Like the silence, it's calm. It's like forced meditation. So, and I've grown to love it. And I think it's made me definitely a lot calmer as a person as well. I think maybe.
Yeah. Happy
Sort of.
days. All right. Well, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Keep up
Thanks
the
for
good
having
work.
me. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Appreciate it.